We begin in South Africa, where its police service has suspended 8 VIP unit officers accused of assaulting 4 civilians on a national highway in broad daylight. The suspension comes after several organizations and citizens demanded that the police be suspended based on videos, or the video rather, of them assaulting motorists that went viral on social media last week.
The officers are members of the SAPC, Protection and Security Services, SAPS Protection and Security Services, I beg your pardon, and they are attached to the protection detail of the country's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile. The Deputy President was not in the vehicles when the incident happened. Civil society organizations such as Action Society have released a petition calling for the banning of blue lights for ministers and for the officers to be charged with attempted murder, malicious damage to property, and intimidation. Joining us to discuss this further is an executive director for Organization Undoing Tax Abuse Advocate, Stephanie Fick. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right, now let's get into it. The fact that these men had the confidence to do something so dastardly in broad daylight without fear of repercussion, thankfully was caught on camera, and now we're seeing this. I'd like you to say, share with us what this says about the security detail of the Deputy President, and why has it, why did it take a bit of time? Would you say that, the investigation has gone according to plan? Would you say that the delay in the response to this is probably unwarranted?
Yeah, it is really scary to think that, and the question is, if that was not on social media, would anything have happened? And we should be, be sure that there's not a message out there that they are a power unto themselves. And unfortunately, it appears that way. This is not the first time that this has happened. And it is now time that we actually do something about it. And I think the call for some accountability is really warranted. The question is also, if me and you did this, would we have been arrested? And I think the answer is yes. So why is there special treatment of, for example, these police officers? On the one hand, we understand that they have, they have a duty, but they have a duty to protect, South Africans in general, and what you see there is definitely not taking the best interest of the citizens of the country into account. So although it is good news that they were suspended, the next question is, shouldn't that suspension be without pay? And yes, of course, there will be a time when they will appear in court, hopefully. And whether they're innocent or guilty, they will either be found innocent or guilty. But in the meantime, I think what is extremely important is that we cannot allow, the powers that be to sort of get away with something like this. And it is high time that we look at how do we hold them accountable. And then the whole question is, do we really need them?
Oh, well, now we're even talking about, a suspension, which, I think a lot of people would agree, still did take a while. Deputy President Paul Mashatile, of course, had to even make a statement, before any of these, suspensions happened. But is the suspension enough, and do we trust the South African government to go beyond just a suspension? Will we expect that these persons will be sued? Will they be fired eventually? What kind of investigations are we expecting to happen, aside just suspending them?
I think it's an extremely good question. I mean, it is, I always go back to, our criminal justice system specifically makes provision for the fact that and our constitution makes provision for the fact that you are innocent until proven guilty. But we shouldn't get stuck in that. That will happen. But in the meantime, you're talking about employees of the South African Police Service, that has a duty to protect, and what we've seen is the opposite. So, is suspension enough? I think the answer is no, because are we also going to see suspended police officers for the next 5, 6, 7 years while disciplinary hearing takes place? I think the answer lies. Firstly, the question is, why haven't they been arrested? I think the evidence at least prima facie, looking at the video, is there. There's possibly some investigations outstanding, for example, the extent of the injuries and so forth. And investigations can happen while people are arrested. And then the whole question about, I think that incident, sure, every time, I mean, the hairs on my back stand up when I see that. South Africans, generally, we have a very high crime rate. And, if the people that are supposed to protect you are turning into criminals, we cannot allow that. And accountability really is key. And to come back to your question, suspension without pay, being arrested is definitely the first steps in the right direction.
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. The people who are meant to be the ones that are enforcing justice are the ones that are now enforcing injustice, which is very unfortunate. I'd like us to also talk about those who were assaulted. Do we have any conversation as to compensation for them? Is there anything that the government is going to do? First of all, we know that no compensation will be adequate to match up with the humiliation that they've experienced. But is there something that the government will do to maybe say sorry or to apologize for how they were wrongfully treated?
Well, I sincerely hope so. I didn't get the impression from the newspaper articles and hearing what is happening on the ground that has necessarily happened, which is also a tragedy. What I can tell you is, interestingly enough, been in a conversation with another victim. She lost her husband. She's a widow, and she lost the only breadwinner in the family. 6 years. 6 years since the incident happened, and we still do not have the perpetrators either in custody. They're talking about an inquest. When she was asked whether government is at least helping, giving her information. Not everybody understands process, because that's not what they do for a living. And it's to take victims by the hand and just assist them. It appears it did not happen. So hopefully in this instance, it will. The good news is it seems that the victims could afford attorneys. So, their rights are being protected. There's also, I think, attorneys firms that said that, we will do this pro bono. We will do this for free. But, maybe a discussion for another time. But not everybody can afford that type of legal representation, et cetera, et cetera. So, is the government going to take the victims by the hand and lead them through this process and making sure that their needs are catered for? Unfortunately, the trust deficit between citizens and government is big. And unfortunately, I have to say, I don't necessarily think that they will get the necessary support that they deserve in this instance. But, maybe something positive from government will come out of it. Let's not be too negative. But in the meantime, hopefully they will consider claiming damages, hopefully by showing, good faith that government will not allow a case like that, a civil case like that, to be dragged out for the next 10 years and everybody just throw in the towel because it's taking too long.
Oh, I think there was something you were about speaking or going to speak about earlier, but I want to know if just like Olive had asked, the boldness with which they did this in broad daylight, does that represent what the South African police and people in security agencies in South Africa does that represent how they feel about the citizens' rights, the rights of the average South African citizen, and how maybe they feel untouchable by the system? Is this a proper representation of what that is? And would you expect that Deputy President Paul Mashatile would be doing more?
It is a tragedy that that we're talking about this on a platform and discussing the behavior of some of the better paid individuals in the South African police service. Is that the example of all policemen? I would like to say no. I think that there are hardworking policemen. Are they under-resourced? Yes. Can they assist every victim in South Africa? No. Is there a political will to change just the circumstances of the police, the fact that the police are, if you look at, if you compare the amount of policemen available, the pay that they get versus, what South Africans need, I think our priorities are not all, is a bit skewed. But I would like to say that there are still individuals in the South African Police Service that's a service to them. They want to serve the public. But unfortunately, because of this incident, it is now, on its headline news, it's on the front newspapers, but maybe that is good. What makes a democracy good is the fact that media can report something like this. We can talk about it without fear about being, retaliation, etc. And that it is good to talk about this, because how do we do it better? But I do think that specifically the VIP, the Blue Light Brigade, there has been a lot of talk that they are a law unto themselves, and that the people that they are supposed to protect, in other words, it's your higher ranking politicians, also, use or abuse their powers in order to, they have no consequence for just normal people. And, then we need to talk about abuse of power, because they do have, the police have got powers to, for example, exceed the speed limit if it falls within their duty. And you can think about, for example, it's the same as an ambulance. If an ambulance with sirens and stuff is driving behind you, of course you want to get out of the way, because as a citizen, it's your civil duty to obey. Ambulances, police, and whatever. But if you start getting the impression that you're not sure whether a VIP protection unit policeman is doing something in the line of duty, and that there may be an abuse of power, you're losing trust. Some of the more important departments in society.
We've seen organizations, civil organizations, asking that the blue light be taken out, and we are definitely going to follow up to see what exactly is being done to these officers, if they'll be charged with murder, or what charges will be brought before them, and if they are actually going to be paid. Stephanie Fick, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central for the conversation.
Thank you.
All right.